So the danger of walking in the Spirit is, how do I trust myself to know that I'm following the Spirit? So this is what the Bible says. It says, you need to test or to prove your spirit. Right? The Greek word is dokimazo, and the definition of it means to test or examine, to prove, right? To see whether a thing is genuine or not. Examine or deem worthy. Right? Test it, examine it, prove yourself in that way. So Romans 12 says, and be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove or examine what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Right? So we need to do that. We need to constantly test ourselves. 1 Thessalonians says, prove or examine all things and hold fast that which is good. 1 Peter says this, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than gold, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory of Jesus Christ. You need to examine yourself. Prove to yourself that what you're doing, following, is the right thing to do, regardless how difficult it may be. But what is important, however, is that this opinion of yourself, as you test yourself, has to be your own. You examine yourself. That's something that is very important. All right. There are people who feel that they're not thinking straight because the rest of the society says certain things and you don't believe it. You think, oh, why am I so different? Right. I think Bible doesn't want you to feel different than what other people's opinions are, is because Bible wants you to have your own opinion and stick with it. Don't compare to anyone else. Because what you're doing as you prove to God and to yourself and others and examining yourself following the Spirit, only your thought counts. Don't let anyone else influence you of your faith. That's why when I was growing up, I just believed in what the church taught me to believe. Of course I would believe it. Of course I believe it. I don't know how to think otherwise. But when I got old enough to think on my own, and especially when you're taught things that doesn't make any sense, that you start asking questions. And when you start asking questions, you start testing it, and then you come up with different, answers, then you follow that. All right? It has to be your own. Examine yourself. So in the Bible, in 2 Corinthians, it says this. It says, examine or test yourselves, whether you be in the faith. Prove your own selves. No, not your own selves, how that Jesus Christ is in you. All right? Because only you can know yourself. There are a lot of times when we get confused and depressed about things that we want to talk to other people, and there's definitely time for that. But to take information and allow other people to put thoughts into your mind that corrupts your memory, then you're losing yourself. So Bible says then, it says, let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. That's why Paul, when he talks about it, what he's saying is you need to find out your gifts, your passions, and go with that alone. And as you go along with it, you'll meet others, right, who would have the same interest or same ideas, that you will come together to support one another. But you don't look for support and then try to work. You got to go with your own gifts, your own talents, your own mind. So you have nobody, you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. So when somebody else comes to you and say you're not a good Christian, there's no way you should heed to that opinion. Because that's all it is an opinion. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people get upset, a lot of Christians get upset when I say theology is just an opinion. It's not the truth. The truth is Jesus Christ. right? Theology is our opinion of the truth. Basically, I think when evil happens quite a bit, when we lose ourselves into collective, that we stop being an individual. We stop proving ourselves to God and to ourselves, to test ourselves, and we judge ourselves by where we belong. So there are a lot of Christians that say, come along and says, oh, I'm a sinner. And when I say I'm not a sinner, they don't want to say, hey, how is it that you don't believe it? Yeah, they don't ask questions. They just go, oh, they just get mad. And that's it. There's no conversation. You know, where do we get that mentality of getting angry at one another? Is because we think we lose ourselves into a group thinking, and our individuality is gone. So we just have to follow a group. What's the definition of evil? Like the way the Bible describes it. What do you think the word evil means? Because if you really look up the word evil, the way it was written 2,000 years ago, the Greek word is kakos. Tacos. Kakos. Right? Cacao. Oh, maybe cacao came from the word evil. Cacao is evil.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Don't use cacao because it's evil. Anyway, kakos means this. It just means of bad nature, right? It's a wrong way of thinking, wrong way of acting, injurious, or the one I like is destructive or troublesome. When you do things and continue to do things that's destructive to yourself, you're doing evil. Or you continue to do things that brings trouble, or something that's injurious, or even your mode of thinking that is detrimental to you. That's evil, right? And there are beliefs within the church, within politics, within anything, that it should be considered evil because it is injurious, it is troublesome, and it is destructive. It doesn't glorify God because of that reason. That's what is evil. So how do we get that way? Well, I think, right, one of the big problem is we have this thing called desire, right? And desire is a wonderful thing. But if we allow it to go a little too far, then that desire could lead us to the path of wrong. So when it comes to the Spirit, like we talked about last week, you are the pillar. Pillar, what it looks like doesn't matter. Because the job of a pillar is to lift things up, right? Like a lighthouse. A pillar keeps the light, on, so it won't fall down. What the pillar looks like, it really doesn't matter, as long as holding up the light. We're supposed to lift up Jesus Christ and the light of Christ, right? But then when you start desiring what the pillar is supposed to look like, right? And then we start foaming it, if that becomes more important, even though you're still lighting up, then people start not looking at the light, you start looking at the pillar. Then becomes destructive, if you will, right?
Then it becomes a business.
Then it becomes a business.
Yeah, then you can market.
Yeah. And then everybody has to agree on it or whatever, all right? So this is what Gibran said on evil. He starts out a poem that says, the question was asked, what do you say about good and evil? And the prophet says, I could tell you about good, but I cannot tell you anything about evil because I don't believe in evil. And I love that.
Wow.
Because the evil he's talking about, when religious people talk about evil, you're talking about satanic, hell, because he doesn't believe in that, right? But this is what he says. For what evil is, but good, tortured by its own hunger and thirst. Verily, when good is hungry, it seeks food even in dark caves, and when it thirsts, it drinks even of dead waters. What he's saying is that when you're doing good, is not enough, and a desire to be more good, that's where you start poisoning yourself. You know? When you start to want to improve on yourself little too much. Like if you're the pillar and you care so much about the pillar and what it looks like, it becomes destructive. That if you're not satisfied with your spiritual walk and doing good, and because of the pressure of the world that says you have to be really, really good and you desire more good, like you said, and it has to happen within my lifetime, and you start doing things for the sake of good, that becomes evil. Then he says, then you start eating things in the dark cave. What does that mean? It means that you don't know what you're eating. Right? And then basically he said, and you start drinking because you're thirsty from dead water. What happens when you drink out of dead water? Yeah, you get sick. You're bringing sick. That sickness is evil, because that's torture. You know, that makes a lot of sense. So what Bible says, that one thing I found is in 1 Timothy, you know, because we all know money is important. Money is dang good. So money is good, but what does the Bible say? Love of money is the root of every evil. And the word, this word evil is not like, you know, you're so bad kind of a thing. It means the root of all evil, chaos, destruction or torture of your life, bad way of thinking and things like that. And of course, you know, that is true. Money is good, but when you desire or love money that much, is the root of every destruction and whatever in the world. You know? So that means anything that is good that you're doing because you're following the Spirit and things like that, and once you get that desire to do more than you ought, right? That's why the Bible says live a life of moderation. Right? Then that's the beginning of, evil. So following the Spirit is individual task, and as individuals, we join with other individuals to create a body. Right? It doesn't mean everybody's going to agree with our belief, but everybody will agree that Jesus Christ is the Lord. We'll support of one another. Right? If we're a body, as it says, you know, you're an arm, I'm a foot, you know, the foot has to just focus on being a great foot. Because if I'm injured, it affects the rest of the body. Right? The right hand cannot look at a foot and say, hey, what the heck is wrong with you? Because right hand doesn't know anything about what a foot is supposed to do. Let the individual do his own thing, walk in the Spirit. That's the only way we could come together as a body. So Paul's advice is for us to accept one another and each person live out their own faith. All right? I think that's really important. Right? So that's what it means to follow the Spirit, and we need to test ourselves to make sure we don't go beyond what is good, that our good we do in life doesn't get hungry, that we start striving for something more, which brings evil, or evil meaning torture and destruction to ourselves. Okay? And as we do, we are one with myself. You judge yourself, but let others do the same. Right? If we could do that, then there's unity. Because Christ unites, we don't have to force it. You know, because his goal is to bring all people in heaven and earth together in one. We will be united, working together as a smooth oil machine if we just follow. All right? Don't push it. Follow the Spirit.